Well, hey guys, I'm Nick and welcome back to the channel. Well, today we're talking about Star Trek Prodigy, episode 15 of season 1, entitled Masquerade. This show is really going from strength to strength now. We've got a really nice dynamic going on between our bouncing back and forth between the Protostar and Dauntless crew. We've got some really exciting locations and environments our teams are travelling to on these episodes, and it's really becoming quite a well-rounded and quite an enjoyable Star Trek series to watch. And in this week's episode, we had Okona back again. We've got Romulans back again in this episode. We've got appearance from legacy characters such as Edward Jellico, who we saw back in Next Generation, and references to other Star Trek, iconic characters such as Arik Soong, the character we saw in Star Trek Enterprise, played by none other than Brent Spiner. Obviously, he plays all of the Soong family, and we've got a reference to him in this episode. We've got a lot of action with the Romulans, the Tal Shiar, links back to Star Trek Picard Season 1. This week's episode was pretty jam-packed, so we're going to take a look through all the different bits and pieces in this episode and really get to the nuts and bolts of what went down in this week's episode of Star Trek Prodigy. Guys, just before we get into this week's review, Black Friday, this Black Friday sale, a huge discount on my merch store, 35% off. Normally 20% off is as good as it ever gets, but for special Black Friday, one day only, 35% off. So be sure to check out all my stuff at the merch store Black Friday to pick up that 35% off discount. Don't miss it. Okay, so in this week's episode, we saw Protostar crew. We've got Okona still on board with the crew. We've got Murph in his new form, which is sort of as a biped. He's got arms and legs now, and he's not quite coping with phasering, or he's wielding two phasers and he's shooting them all around the ship. It's like, talk about not give the small children, sharp things to play with. I think they needed to maybe put the phasers on a slightly higher shelf so that Murph can't access them just until he kind of gets a bit more accustomed to his new form. We've got Dal obviously getting a bit jealous about maybe Okona hanging out with Gwyn a little bit too much. He's having sort of some daydream moments of blowing him out an airlock, which was quite funny. I think there's a nice dynamic going on and with the appearance of Thane and Okona in Prodigy at the moment. Now, we've obviously got the Dauntless crew with Janeway and co reporting back into Starfleet, and it's good to see a revisiting of the character of Edward Jellico, obviously made famous by the actor Ronnie Cox, who, let's pretty much say, he made a career out of playing an arsehole from RoboCop to Total Recall, so many sci-fi franchises and everything. He always played, the sort of jerk leader, as he played with so much proficiency as well in the Chain of Command double part episode in Next Generation. Good to see him back giving Janeway orders and bossing her around. And we get our crew heading to I guess a trading port by the name of Noble Isle, which hasn't got any beaming capability because of lightning storms and so forth in the atmosphere. So they have to take this elevator thing down to the surface. It's a nice looking planet. It's a different change of location and everything that we're kind of used to. They really do a good job on Prodigy to give us a really interesting dynamic and broad range of locations and environments and everything. And this week was no exception. I think, the planet they headed to, a little bit free cloud, a little bit all that glitzy sort of neon signage and everything everywhere and everything, but more of being more of a trading port, I suppose. And this is where we get to meet our geneticist character, Dr. Jargo, which was, the character that Okona was meant to deliver some bits and pieces to. But obviously that shipment got left back at the outpost they were on last week. And it turns out that Dr. Jargo is a geneticist. And she is going to pick apart Dal's DNA and see if she can work out what his origins are. And in this episode, we actually get to find out quite a bit about Dal and basically what his origin is. And from what we can gather, is a complete mixture and hybrid of many different known Star Trek races. He's a big melting pot of almost every known Alpha Quadrant race in the Federation. And the person responsible for making this big soup that is Dal, genetically speaking, is none other than the proteges of Dr. Arik Soong. Arik Soong, obviously, one of the Soong ancestors. We saw him played by Brent Spiner in the Enterprise episode to do with the augments and everything. So it would appear, going by Dr. Jargo's interpretation of Dal's DNA, he is essentially an augment created by Dr. Soong's research, and he's a combination of about 26 different species, including Vulcan, Klingon, Andorian, Tellarite, Cardassian, Suliban, Kazon, Kazinti, species 8472, Romulan, and even Ferengi. You name it. He's got a bit of everything in him. It would appear that, obviously Dal takes the opportunity upon himself to, get Dr. Jargo to, let's face it, unlock a bit of his genetic makeup. And we see a bit of a metamorphosis here in Dal. Not only is Murph going through changes, but Dal's going through some pretty extreme changes in this episode as well, where we see him take on characteristics of Klingons, and he has telepathic abilities like the Vulcans. He's got Andorian antennae. He's got Tellarite tusks. It's all going on for Dal, and it's all a bit too much at once for him in this episode, but at the same time he seems to be enjoying it somewhat. Now, while our crew are on Noble Isle, obviously, we get a little bit of a storyline going on with the Romulans, who are trying to seize the protostar for themselves as well. And we've got a bit of a link to Star Trek Picard Season 1 here. Our Romulans, being Tal Shiar operators, are wearing the same kind of uniforms, using the same kind of weaponry, phases and everything that we saw in Star Trek Picard Season 1 with our Romulans in those sort of black motorcycle helmet kind of appearance. They've got the phases that have the two sort of, ends on them, I guess you'd say. They've obviously gone to the trouble of linking the look and style of the Romulans in this episode back to our Tal Shiar Romulans that we saw back in Season 1 of Star Trek Picard. So it's good that connection is obviously seen through the different series. We get a pretty good action sequence in this episode with the whole lift chase. We've got the Romulans fighting against the Protostar crew in the elevators, chasing up the big lift shaft or whatever from the surface back up to where the ships are docked and everything. And we get a little bit more information about Murph's new abilities. It would appear like now that Murph is a biped, he is, let's face it, he's got some Odo-like abilities. So he's obviously taking on a bit more of a security role, as Roktak says in this episode. It looks like they've found their new security chief. Murph is going to give Odo a bit of a run for his money in terms of his shape-changing abilities. Murph's kicking butt with a few Romulans on the lift shaft there, changing his form into different shapes and forms and everything in order to thwart them. By the end of the episode, obviously, Dal gets his original appearance back again. They deactivate the genetic enhancements and whatever that the Dr. Jargo activated within Dal, which I guess we figured was probably going to happen anyway, because it was a bit too much for him all in that one episode. But the big reveal we got at the end of this episode was the fact that Ensign Essentia on the USS Dauntless is not necessarily who we thought she was. She is not a Trill at all. She has obviously got a little genetic chip in the back of her neck as well, similar to what Dal had, which has been, I guess, inhibiting her true appearance, which is another Valnakat operative, I guess you'd say. Same species as Gwyn and the Diviner. And Essentia, it appears, yes, is another time-travelling Valnakat who's come back from the future to, I guess, take the Protostar, which is obviously what the Diviner was trying to do. And I guess she's just another operative who's, I guess, was a backup maybe in case he didn't succeed. She's there as a sort of a spy on board the Dauntless to achieve the same goal. So at the end of the episode, yeah, she activates the coffee table, which turns into another version of a dreadnought droid, I guess you'd say. We've definitely got a few very interesting story threads that are creeping up in Prodigy now. I think the show is consistently, since we started back from episode 11, been really interesting. We've got a lot of interesting stories being told. We've got a lot of legacy characters jumping in and out of the show, from Akona to Jellico and everything as well. It's shaping up for a really good first season. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. But let me know what you guys think of this episode 15 of season 1, Masquerade of Star Trek Prodigy. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and we'll get chatting about what everyone's opinion of how Prodigy is shaping up this season. Guys, don't forget to check out the merch store sale again. Black Friday, 35% off everything. Jump in there and take a look. Pick yourself a massive bargain. I'll be back very soon with my next video, and I'll catch you guys soon.